One of the most frequent questions that I get asked is what's better, Battlemaster or Wardancer, as it's going to be called in the West, or Striker? And that eventually turned into, why do you think Battlemaster is better than Striker? So let me just make myself crystal clear here so that you guys understand and know exactly what my stance is on this. Both classes are in the same category, okay? Battlemaster is not better than Striker. Battlemaster excels at teamwork, team play, and defense compared to Striker that excels at being a DPS carry or damage output when compared to each other, relative to each other. So let me just make that clear one more time, okay? Battlemaster is not better than Striker. However, I wouldn't say that Striker is also hands down definitively better than Battlemaster. Okay, they are definitely in the same category and excel at two different things, and how you value those two things is what's going to determine whether you think one is better than the other. And we're gonna talk about that. We're gonna talk about my personal opinions on that matter, as well as being objective when comparing the two. I'm going to actually show you exactly what are the differences between these two classes as per the current meta build for PvP. Okay, so we're going to go over the objective information first, okay? And this is something that we can all find common ground on, and if you don't give a shit about my personal opinion, then this is probably all you're gonna want to hear, okay? So when it comes to Striker and Battlemaster, these are the two builds that you see here, and I've got my handy dandy MS Paint out, and if I were to kind of explain to you or give you a breakdown on these skills, I need to start by mentioning that we could definitely, even if you're in disagreement with everything that I say, we can find common ground with the fact that both of these builds are definitely the meta build when it comes to PvP. Okay, this is definitely the meta build. Are there certain skills that you can swap in and out for both classes? Absolutely. But for the most part, these two builds are the meta builds, and this would be a good baseline for us to compare these two classes. Okay, the first four skills we don't even need to talk about because they're literally copy pasted. It's the same. It's the same for both classes. Okay, so because of the similarities between these skills, that's why a lot of people say it's pretty much the same class, but you know, here are the differences, etc., etc. Okay, if we were to take a look at this next skill, both classes with this build, they take 1 hard CC. To compare these two, this skill right here, Advent, and I'm going to call these by the name that's written on this document. The names are translated differently between each region, and we don't know what the names are going to be yet in the NA region. So I'm just going to call these skills by the name that's written on this document here, or this MS Paint. So Advent here is a skill that has stagger, that has protection to stagger. No protection to any knockups, knockdowns, so level 2 CCs. It is a gap closing hard CC that lasts for 1 second. Okay, Strike right here is a hard CC that is applied much quicker than Advent. However, it is a short range gap closer. There's a little bit of a gap closing mechanism to it, although it's not very long. It's pretty much a short range skill. And it also applies a hard CC, but for 2 seconds. So the hard CC duration is longer than Advent. Now, I think it's important to mention that Advent here is available to Battlemaster as well. Okay, so Battlemaster, you can't say that Battlemaster's hard CC is not as good as Striker, because if that's your position, assuming this build, Battlemaster literally has this as well. Okay, so Battlemaster, you can choose Advent for Battlemaster if you'd like. But those are the main differences between those two skills. Next, we have the key, what I would call the key differences between these two skills. We've got Cloud Dragon on Striker versus Bung on BM. These are the comparable skills. Again, Bung here is available to Striker, so you cannot say that Cloud Dragon is inferior to Bung in this regard, because it's available for Striker as well. And I think everybody in the whole world would agree that Cloud Dragon is superior. And I'm trying not to say one is better than the other, because I'm going to save that for the opinion part. But I feel like I can confidently say this, because this is kind of, everyone knows this. What Cloud Dragon is, it is a 3-part skill that allows you to engage disengage to a certain degree. It allows you to weave, you can weave skills in between, so you can use it for combos. It gives you very creative engages. It allows you to extend your combos. It's just an all-around very good skill. Bung is used for the same purpose in the sense that you use it to catch, you could use it to catch targets, you could use it to continue to juggle targets, you could use it to, I guess it's the same thing as juggle targets. I was going to say extend your CCs, and both apply a knockup. Okay. I don't think I really have to explain too much, but because, I mean, again, Cloud Dragon, I'm in agreement. Cloud Dragon is just better than Bung. But Cloud Dragon, both skills are unprotected. However, Cloud Dragon does have stagger immunity on the third hit. Both skills knock up. All right, next we've got what I call the buff skills, or the, I guess I was gonna say core differences, but like all 6 of these skills are really the core differences. If we talk about Whisper of Lightning and Whisper of Wind, Whisper of Lightning is just a damage skill, and for Striker is a class that has a larger importance on meter generation than Battlemasters do. And the reason why is because Thunderstrike requires 2 orbs. It burns meter in order to use it. Again, this is being objective. That's the truth. Striker's building meter is significantly more important to Striker than it is Battlemaster, for sure. By the way, Strike only requires 1 orb. Thunderstrike requires 2. Okay, so Whisper of Lightning is not only for damage, but also for meter generation. And depending on the tripod that you could take, it also gives your team a 6-second attack speed buff for 8% on a 20-second cooldown for PvP. So this buff is only applied assuming you take the tripod, because a lot of people will actually take a different tripod instead of the buff. And that tripod allows them to generate meter faster. And again, that's significant and understandable because Strikers require meter generation, right? It's much more important for them to build meter than Battlemaster because of this next skill, which we're going to talk about here in a second. Whisper of Wind not only applies that same attack speed buff, 8%, but also applies a 16% movement speed buff, a 20% damage reduction buff, on top of doing damage, and applies those 3 buffs for its team. Okay, so, you know, say what you will, that is what this skill does, and this is, I must say that this skill has, assuming that you're going 1,000 points into agility, which you should be, the cooldown time on this skill is 25 seconds. The buffs last for 6 seconds, which means that you have a 24% uptime on these buffs. So 24% uptime on 8% attack speed, 16% movement speed, and 20% damage reduction. If we're going to compare the two in terms of damage, Whisper of Lightning actually does more damage than Whisper of Lightning, if we're going to compare the actual damage. Again, we don't really talk about meter generating skills for Battlemaster because it's not as important. And I should mention that the damage from Whisper of Wind, I didn't really want to mention it because you don't really use this skill for damage. You use it for the buffs, right? That's what you use it for. But since we are trying to be objective, as far as this skill goes, Whisper of Lightning does more damage, or I'm sorry, Whisper of Wind does more damage. The last 2 skills that we have here, Thunderstrike to begin with. This is like the flagship skill for Striker that everyone talks about, and the vast majority of people that say that Striker is better than Thunderstrike, the vast majority of people that do say Striker is better than Battlemaster, they keep talking about this skill. Okay, that little comment was not objective. That's my opinion. That's what it feels like to me, at least. But to get back to the objective information, Thunderstrike is the only skill between both classes that has level 2 super armor. And Thunderstrike is a very, very powerful skill. It is a super armor knock-up skill that is used to engage or disengage. And assuming that you take the correct tripods for it, that's consistent with the meta build, it is a double dash knockup that is protected. It actually also does pretty good damage. And the first dash does more damage than the second dash, and both dashes knock up or apply a level 2 CC on the target. So just all around a very good skill. However, this skill has a 14-second cooldown, 10 seconds if you're running the -4 second duration, -4 second cooldown tripod, which most people don't actually, because you have to give up 15% damage to a single target if you do. It's pretty much on a 14-second cooldown, which is actually pretty good. It's very good for how strong it is, but the catch to this skill is that it requires meter. It doesn't require 1 orb, it requires 2 orbs. And to kind of put that into perspective, assuming that you're going meta build 240, 249 into subdue, 1000 into agility, you have to get a Whisper of Lightning, a defense. I'm going to call this defense. It's not called defense, but I think it's called halberd kick in Russia. So this skill, and this skill, if you get all, which are your highest meter generating skills, which are all unprotected, which are all melee skills that require you to be literally next to the target, okay? That's getting those 3 skills off still is not enough to get 2 orbs to use the Thunderstrike skill, okay? This is a very important aspect of Striker, okay? If this skill, Striker would perform exponentially better if it didn't require meter to actually use Thunderstrike, but it does. I'm not saying that it shouldn't require meter or it should require less meter or more meter. I'm just being objective. It requires meter, and that is a fact that you need to look at and understand, because it's not like you just, because it is a very powerful skill, you don't have it available constantly, okay? Battlemaster, on the other hand, this skill, Internal Space, you do have this available whenever you want, and with the, assuming you're going 1000 into agility, which again you should for PvP, this is pretty much a perma solo damage reduction buff of 10%, which means that you're constantly running around with 10% damage reduction, and it also deals passive damage. You get an aura around your character, and that aura, whenever you're next to a target, that aura just passively deals damage, and when it explodes, it also applies a level 2 CC and knockbacks the target. Now, you're not going to be using this for the CC, but it can definitely help, especially if you're trying to be that frontline bruiser hitting multiple targets, because that aura is going to cleave, do some extra damage for cleaving. If it happens to be expiring when you're around multiple people, you can get a multi knock-up. Is it reliable? Absolutely not. That's why I don't really talk about, the damage is not super amazing. It's not like, it's not comparable to Thunderstrike's damage, and the knock-up isn't reliable for combos, obviously, but it is what it is, right? I should mention what it does, and I think you have I think it's like a 1.5 second downtime on this skill. You could pretty much keep it up almost permanently. It's not technically perma, but it's if you wanted to continue to rotate it, it's like a 1 second, it's like 1 second downtime on it. Okay, so the next section we're gonna go over is my personal opinions and my personal thoughts. So as you can see here, I've written out a damage carry here next to Striker, and a support damage secondary support next to BM. Okay, so what does this mean? I think when you want to compare these two classes, you need to consider what it is that they can do, like what their role will be. If we look at the Striker class here, right? If we look at the Striker class, if you look at its kit, everything is just designed around damage, okay? So it can be nothing other than a damage carry class, all right? Period. It doesn't do anything other than maybe give an 8% attack speed buff to his team, and that's a big maybe. The issue with this is that as a damage carry class, when you compare it to other damage carry classes like Lancemaster or Blade, it just doesn't do a very good job, okay? So it's not very good at what it's supposed to be doing. When you look at Battlemaster, it's certainly not a support where it's going to be compared to like a paladin or a bard. Definitely not. it's going to be closer towards like a Soul Master or Warlord. Is it as good as a Soul Master or Warlord? No. If we use Soul Master as an example, there's support. Soul Master's support is probably better than Battlemaster. Soul Master's damage output is better than Battlemaster. It's just better. And that's also why I don't think anyone that has experience with PvP would actually argue that Battlemaster is better than Soul Master. Soul Master is definitely good. We're essentially comparing who is the less shittier class. If I were to put it really blunt, that's pretty much what we're doing. But I think if we are just strictly comparing these two classes, you have to take a look at what the Battlemaster can do outside of just damage, right? So when I'm looking at these two classes, as a Battlemaster, sure, the offensive output is not as good as a Striker. No one's arguing that. But its support that it offers its team with Whisper of Wind and what it could do with internal space. These two skills, not that this skill is super impactful, but these two skills allow it to be like a frontline bruiser, an initiator that Striker cannot be. So there's value that Battlemaster can bring to a team that Striker cannot. And I think that value shouldn't be ignored when comparing these two teams. Look, at the end of the day, these two classes are in the same tier, in my opinion. At the end of the day, if you were to tell me Striker is better than Battlemaster because this support that the Battlemaster gives to his team, to her team, is not better than the extra damage output that you get from Striker. If that's your stance, then that's understandable. That's fine. I could accept that argument, whether I agree with that or not. That's totally a valid argument, right? However, I think that is up for debate versus the stance being Striker is just so much better than Battlemaster. Yeah, from a damage output, it's definitely better than Battlemaster, but I disagree with the notion that Striker is significantly better than Battlemaster, if that makes sense. So to go back to kind of what I was talking about as far as the roles go, Striker, hands down, they're going to be a damage carry, a damage carry role. They can do nothing other than that. A Battlemaster, however, they aren't as supporty as obviously a Warlord and obviously not as good as a Soul Master, but they're in that spectrum, right? They do have support skills that they can give their team, not just in the form of damage reduction, but also in the form of movement speed, attack speed, in the form of attack opportunities as a frontliner, getting the other team to burn cooldowns on the Battlemaster's engage. Because it's an off support. Remember, it's not a main support, because some people will be like, oh, this damage reduction 20% is not a lot. Well, that's where I would have to disagree. I think a 20% damage reduction buff is definitely not something that you can ignore, especially when this game in 3v3 is designed around dealing damage, chipping damage, and not taking damage in return. Like, for example, if one team engages with another team, after that team fight, one team is going to have more HP left. Like, one team might be wiped while the other team might have, like, let's say 20% HP left, or 10% HP left, or maybe it's pretty close. Maybe they both died. Like, that is damage dealt versus damage received. And having a 20% damage reduction to that is definitely not something that has zero value, especially when it's an off support. Again, an off support, meaning that if a Battlemaster has like a paladin, think about how much damage reduction that team has, cycling a 20% damage reduction buff, a 40% damage reduction buff, the shield, the ult from the, and having a frontline bruiser, right? So, or initiator. With both Battlemaster and a Paladin, if the Paladin is taking on that role, think about how much value that would bring to that team, on top of the fact that their true damage carries would have better attack opportunities, right? So I'm not saying that by explaining this, I don't want this to come across as me, really hyping up Battlemaster, because I'm not. Battlemaster is hands down a weak class, one of the weakest classes in the current meta. but that doesn't mean that you can ignore some of the positive stuff that it does, because too many players just look at damage output amongst all classes and they're like, well, Battlemaster doesn't dish as much damage as Striker, it's immediately shit. And I think that's an unfair comparison, because at that rate, Striker is also better than Paladin. It's also better than Warlord. It's also better than Bard. And I think we can all agree that that's just not true. Okay, so I hope that clears some of the misconceptions up. As far as the objective part, I hope that's helped you kind of but understand a little bit better what the differences are between these two classes, because I do know a lot of you guys that are viewing this video have never actually played these two classes. Excuse me. And I wanted to, again, show you exactly what the differences are, because I know whether you're in Discord or on streams, you're just going to kind of hear the same stuff over, and it kind of becomes a he said, she said type of thing. So I wanted to put this information out here so that you can make your own decisions based off of objective information, the actual differences between these two classes. And then if you gave a shit about my opinion, great. If you didn't, then, well, I hope that you can at least understand where I came from, assuming that you even listened to that part. Okay, so as far as this one goes, I think that about wraps it up. Yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.